What's up guys, you're watching Life by TCG. Got a video for you today on Pioneer. So the deck that I'm going to be talking about today is from an article just recently by Ari Lax. It's about a new combo deck that's been enabled by the release of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, specifically this new card, Spelunking. So this deck is from an article which he posted last week. I'll put a link to that article in the description. I'm just going to talk a little bit about this deck today from the article and also my own take on it. Now most of the decks that I talk about on my channel, usually, I think at least probably almost all of them up to this point, are decks that I've actually played either in testing or in tournaments, and of course that doesn't necessarily guarantee any standard of quality, but I'm at least speaking from experience, whereas today this is just all like theory crafting. Just working off the ideas that, from the article and my own background and knowledge of the card pool that's available. So let's get into this deck as it stands from the article. So first you need to understand how this combo works, right? It's a combo deck based around this card, Spelunking. 2 and a green enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, play a land. If it's a cave, you gain life, but I mean the deck has no caves, so that's blank text. And crucially, lands you control enter untapped. So the combo is, once you have this enchantment in play, you cast Scapeshift off of 5 lands. So with Scapeshift you sack 5 lands, search for 5 lands. What you search for is 2 copies of Lotus Field, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, 1 Hunter Maze, and 1 of this Immersturm Skullcairn. Then what happens, because the Mystic Sanctuary enters untapped, like you don't control islands, but it enters untapped because of Spelunking, it will trigger because it entered untapped. So well, okay, so technically you can't just do this combo just by starting with Scapeshift. How it works is you bring to light into the Scapeshift. That way you can use the Mystic Sanctuary to put the bring to light back on top of your deck. Then you float black, blue, plus 6 mana off your 2 Lotus Fields. That's 8 mana. You activate Hunter Maze, going down to 6 mana. You draw the Bring to Light that you stacked off the Mystic Sanctuary, and you spend your floating 6 mana into the Bring to Light, and you search for Splendid Reclamation. And meanwhile your triggers from your Lotus Fields mean you sack 4 lands, which means you sack the 2 Lotus Fields, the Mystic Sanctuary, and this Immersturm Skullcairn. And this Hunter Maze sacrifices itself when you activate it. So all of the lands that you search for end up in the graveyard. And then when you redraw the Bring to Light, you play it and you search for Splendid Reclamation, which brings back all the lands from your graveyard. So you get the same set of lands back: 2 Lotus Field, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, 1 Hunter Maze, and 1 Immersturm Skullcairn. All of these come back. Now you use the Mystic Sanctuary to restack the Splendid Reclamation again. Then you do the same loop. So you add mana off your Lotus Field, add mana off your Mystic Sanctuary, activate Hunter Maze to draw Splendid Reclamation again, and then you sack everything to the Lotus Field triggers. So you keep doing this over and over, and eventually you use the floating mana to activate your Skullcairn a bunch of times. So 1 black, red, red, bolt target player, and they discard a card. So yeah, that's how that works. That's the combo. So you need Escape Shift plus 5 lands. And well, technically you need to bring to light into the Scapeshift first, because that way you can use your first Mystic Sanctuary to get your tutor back, so you can get the Splendid Reclamation, which completes the combo. So from there, it's basically like a bring to light Scapeshift kind of control deck, which we've seen in Modern a lot before, just as a way to search for Scapeshift to kill people with Valakut. So the list has like the one-ofs to cast with Bring to Light in situations where the combo is no good. So you have your Tybalt / Valky, which still works with Bring to Light. You have the Glyphweaver Deadly Vanity weird Wrath of God effect. You can like kill everything else and save your Shieldred. You have like sweepers to find off the Bring to Light if you need to. And even like in the end if you need to exile a bunch of Arclight Phoenixes or something. Then you have like cheap interaction, like Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, just to stop yourself from dying to their creatures, and kill Thalia or whatever to allow your loop to keep going. Then Thoughtseize, just cheap interaction, take counterspell or disrupt opponent, whatever. Maze Mind Tome is just like a value card draw thing. Make sure you hit all the resources you need to play your combo. Shieldred, just like a big thing that stabilizes the board, threatens to win the game, whatever. And then Fable as well, just as another generically good card. Yeah, the Goblin attacks and blocks. The loot effect helps you dig for your combo, find all the pieces you need. And yeah, you know, Fable is Fable, it's just a great card. So all the numbers on the mana base, I assume Ari's thought about. He gives like quite a bit of justification in the article for why you should play like 3 Lotus Fields like rather than 2, or like 2 Mystic Sanctuaries rather than 1. Why this has to be like green, why this needs to be black. So there's other win cons you could play, like the Ramanap Ruins or like Ipnu Rivulet, but the key thing is that when you play your first Scapeshift, the 5 lands that you get, you have Sanctuary, 2 Lotus Fields, Hunter Maze, and your win con land. All of those combined have to make at least 4 colors, so that when you stack your Bring to Light with the Mystic Sanctuary, you play it for 4 colors to find your Splendid Reclamation. So like if you play like Ipnu Rivulet here, like you make Ipnu Rivulet makes blue, this also makes blue, so you get stuck on colors and you can't play Bring to Light. So yeah, so that's why that has to be like that. And then you just have a bunch of triomes because you're trying to get 4 colors for your Bring to Light to work. And then Ari also plays 1 Masterminds Acquisition. So I haven't shown you the sideboard. The list in the article has a full sideboard, but a big part of the justification for including this effect in the deck, at least according to Ari, is that is so you can Bring to Light for a tutor that finds Spelunking if you need to, because of course this is the other key part of your combo, and you can't Bring to Light for it directly because Bring to Light can't find enchantments. So yeah, that's basically the deck. Like it's just a straightforward kind of combo control deck. I say it's straightforward, but like these are the types of decks that have the most flexibility out of almost any deck in Magic in terms of like tinkering with what kind of effects you want. So like the difference between Extinction Event versus like Languish or like Ritual of Soot, like all of these things, like do you just want one of these? Do you want one or both? You see all these like weird clutch removal spells you can play, like this like what numbers on like Push and Thoughtseize do you want, like all of this type of stuff. Like you have tons of flexibility. And then when you have this like tutored based deck as well, You have a lot, like all of your individual sideboard cards can be very impactful because you have a lot of ways to find them in each game. So like the exact way that you build a deck like this has a very great impact on like its ultimate performance. So this is the Ari's version of the deck, and he also mentions in the article you can build it in a different way, perhaps by using Beseech the Mirror rather than Bring to Light, because that's also a tutor that helps you cast a 4 mana spell for free. So you can basically do a really similar combo. The problem, sort of, with using Beseech the Mirror is that you need to have a material to sack to it for the bargain cost, but that is like quite achievable. So I'll talk about that in my version of the deck, which I'll show you now. So again, this version of the list is like complete theory crafting. It's obviously cribbed a lot from the list that Ari posted, and a lot of it is very like speculative or just like brainstorming, especially the mana base. Like if you're gonna try to play this deck, 100% you need to like drill down on the mana base and figure out whether it actually makes sense or not, because a lot of the cards here are just like chosen at random. Well, not at random, but like placeholders for like different things that you could use. So the way that this version of the combo works without the Bring to Light, so you don't have Bring to Light anymore, so instead you play Beseech the Mirror, sack something like Maze Mind Tome or whatever, search for the Scapeshift off the 5 lands again. You get 2 Lotus Fields again, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, the card draw land to redraw the thing off the Sanctuary, and the 5th land, rather than a win con like in the 4-color list, it was this thing. As your 5th land, you get a Gingerbread Cabin, which enters untapped just like Mystic Sanctuary and makes it food. So then when you stack the Beseech back to the top of your deck with the Mystic Sanctuary, you activate this to draw your Beseech again. You make a ton of black mana off your Lotus Fields. Then you play the Beseech, sacking the food. So you're guaranteed to bargain again, even if you had no other bargain target when you played the Scapeshift. And then you do the same thing, you get the Splendid Reclamation, you just keep looping it. Now, the question you might ask with this build is like, well, where's the land that actually kills, right? Like, I don't have this thing, which I could potentially use, right? Like, it makes black mana, which is the thing that we care about for casting turn 1 duress and stuff, and when we're comboing off, we can make red off the Lotus Fields. But you don't have to actually play a land as a win con. Now, Ari doesn't mention this at all in the article, so I don't know if he overlooked it or if he thinks it's like strategically relevant. I can't quite figure it out. But like after you keep looping the Splendid Reclamation, every time you loop Splendid Reclamation, you gain 2 mana every time, because 2 Lotus Fields taps for 6, Mystic Sanctuary plus Cabin or your win con land, either way, makes an extra 2, so that's 8 mana. You spend 2 of the 8 mana into this, so you're floating 6 mana. Then you play the Splendid Reclamation again, so you have 2 mana left over. So every time you execute that loop, you gain 2 mana. So you just do it over and over and over and over. You gain infinite mana. Then at the end of the loop, rather than getting the Splendid Reclamation back again, you just get the Beseech. And from there, you Beseech for like whatever win con you want. So even in this Bring to Light version, even in the Bring to Light version, he still had the 1 Masterminds. So you just play like 1 Fireball effect in your sideboard, and then you win the game that way. You don't actually have to play a land that wins you the game. So I'm not sure whether he thinks it's like important to have your win con be a land, or he didn't want to spend a sideboard slot on like Torment of Hailfire or something. But yeah, it just means that in this Beseech build, you don't have to Scapeshift for a land that's like your win con. You can just get the Gingerbread Cabin and then end the loop by beseeching for your win con once you've already made infinite mana. So I have the one like Torment of Hailfire, so you can do the same thing of like Masterminds for it. So yeah, that's how that loop works. So the nice thing about having the cabin in the list is that I just explained how like every time you execute that loop you net 2 mana, right? Whether that's with this version of the deck or Ari's version. So in this version of the deck, every time you do the loop you net 2 mana. You also make it food. So you can do the loop as much as you want, and rather than net 2 mana every time, you spend the 2 mana into the food. So the loop also gains infinite life, because you just gain infinite life off your foods. And then once you've done that, then you can make infinite mana afterwards if you want. You can just keep it going. And the reason why that's important is because each time you execute this loop, you draw a card, right? Because you have to activate this to draw the spell you stacked with Mystic Sanctuary, the Splendor Reclamation. Okay, this means that every time you do the loop, you lose 2 life if your opponent controls a Sheoldred. But if you have the cabin in the loop, every time you do the loop, you gain 3 life. So you execute that life gain loop 1,000,000 times, and then you'll gain 1,000,000 life through the Sheoldred. Then you have a buffer, so once you start executing the loop to gain mana, you don't die. So that's clutch just in general, like playing against Sheoldred. Notably, like, once you get the loop going, because you net 2 mana every time, and you're only casting 1 spell, right, the Splendid Reclamation, it also beats onboard Thalia. Like, you just have to make sure you have enough mana floating when you start the combo so you can Beseech through it. But, you know, that's a nice thing about this deck as well. And I got a bit sidetracked, but yeah, the other nice thing about the life gain part of that loop is it also lets you beat your own Treacherous Blessing. So this is in the deck as like bargain fodder, and also as like card advantage. So this basically replaces the Fables in Ari's version as like a 3 mana value thing that you can either just gain value with or dig for your combo, or I mean, Ari's not interested in sacking the treasures for bargain or whatever, but in this version of the deck, that's what this is for. So obviously in the middle of your comboing, you're sacking this, if you had the choice with your Beseech. But what if you control more than one? Then you just, as I said, like, you use the life gain loop, and as long as you control 2 or fewer Treacherous Blessings, then as you do the loop with sacking the food, you'll gain life each time, and then that builds you up a buffer that you can win through your own Treacherous Blessing. So yeah, the food version of the deck has a lot of upsides, I think. And then apart from that aspect, having Beseech and Gingerbread Cabin rather than Bring to Light and the Imister, I'm going to pronounce this card wrong every time, Imister Miskalkian. Apart from those differences, like, structurally these lists are obviously very similar. You still have the same disruption, you still have like some cheap card draw thing, like Ari literally had Maze Mind Tome in his list as well. In this deck it's like a little bit more interesting because you can sack that for bargain. I put Eye of Vecna in here just as an idea, as like another Maze Mind Tome. That might be wrong, but you know, it's just an idea. Like, you have other cards you can play if you want more interaction, like Cruel Edict that you can bargain. Like, I probably wouldn't main deck this card, but maybe it's an interesting sideboard option. You do have to think about building your deck in ways that you have like slightly more stuff available for bargain. But it's probably doable. Then in terms of sweepers, similar thing, you just have a few options to use as removal. So I don't have the ability to play the Deadly Vanity without the Bring to Light, so I'm just playing 1 Languish instead. It also doesn't kill the Sheoldred, which is nice. But yeah, apart from those slight differences, like the arrangement of spells and everything is almost exactly the same. One big question mark about this build of the deck is whether the mana base is actually better or worse, because you don't have the need to play all these triomes because you're not trying to be 4 colors, which means that you can play arguably like slightly better lands. Like Blooming Marsh is obviously a lot better than a triome if you want to play like Thoughtseize or Push on turn 1, so that's obviously relevant. But then the issue is you're trying to cast this one black spell, which is arguably harder than casting Bring to Life for 4 colors, because you got these in your list, you got these, that. I don't know if you, yeah, in this list you might only want one, just because of this issue that I'm talking about where you need to max black sources. Like, you have Urborg, which is going to bail you out some amount of the time, and you can also do things where like you play the Lotus Field from hand on the turn that you go off, which kind of lets you filter like the off color lands into black. And that can kind of work sometimes, but it is a little bit awkward probably. And like I said, this is all theory crafting. I would just be a little bit careful about that. Whether the mana base actually works, that you can consistently play this when you need to. And yeah, so some of the other lands I have in this list, like just green black makes the most consistent mana. Restless Cottage is nice as like a win con for your control-y kind of backup plan. 4/4 is pretty big, like making a food when it attacks is good if you're racing, or you can bargain away the food for Beseech if you want a combo as well. And then Temple of Melody is probably not a very good card, but I just thought like when you have a deck built around all your lands coming into play untapped, you can sort of maybe think outside the box a bit. Like lands where you thought, well, this card's pretty bad because it comes into play tapped, like maybe the equation shifts on that a little bit. When you have your Spelunking deck. So like if you play Spelunking into your Temple of Melody on like turn 4 or 5, it's not going to slow you down at all. I mean, obviously it's not ideal still if you're trying to Fatal Push something on turn 1, or you're trying to curve out like 1 into 2 into 3, like it's still not ideal. So don't take this as a given that you're putting any number of these in the list, but it's just getting your brain fired up to think about the cards in a slightly different way. In the sideboard, yeah, you want to have your 1 win con so you can wish for it with the Masterminds thingy. You can play like a card like that main deck too, if you want. Like it does make the combo does make Infinite Storm, so this, in theory, it could be like a Aetherflux Reservoir, I guess, but there's no guarantee that you have a follow-up spell after you cast it, which you need, right, to gain the life of the reservoir so you can activate it. So I don't think that actually works. You have to play some actual like Fireball type of card. And it doesn't have to be black, remember, because the combo will make infinite mana of any color. But I don't know. I haven't put any thought into this. I don't really know what card you should play here, or whether it even really matters. And then just some like weird other sideboard cards. Like once you're a shooter based deck, like maybe this helps you beat some grindy deck. Quote unquote 6-drop for the grindy matchups. Like this is pretty solid as like a black green card. You can blow up your own Treacherous Blessing with it if you have to. Yeah. So that's my idea for this this build of the Spelunking combo. There's been a bunch of other combo decks that have just popped up because of this set, like the Cascade mechanic, where you like cascade into Eldritch Evolution. Well, not Cascade, what's the mechanic called? Discover. You play the like 4 mana Discover guy, and it cascades into Eldritch Evolution, and then you sack it, and then you get like a more expensive Discover guy, which is like a huge creature with haste. And that like cascades into a bunch of clone effects. which then like clone and then cascade, so you wind up with like a board of 5 like 6/6 creatures, and it just attacks for lethal. Yeah, it looks pretty nuts. So the ideal case for a deck like this would be that you still threaten like a kill pretty consistently on turn 4 possibly off of this. That you have like Thoughtseize, you can board into more Duress or whatever as well if you want to be more interactive versus combo. Yeah, this deck might be quite strong. It certainly looks cool, and I'm keen to try it, but yeah, like I'm sure Ari's version has had like a lot more thought put into it than mine. So like if you wanted to start somewhere that you can assume is relatively consistent, I would start with this. The major questions for this is whether the mana actually works to cast Beseech or not. And then the question of like what bargain fodders do you actually want to put in your deck to make it work. Like Beanstalk is the premium 2 mana random enchantment that replaces itself, but I don't think there's any actual 5 drops you would want to play, so it doesn't really do anything. So I'm looking at some of these other options instead. This card might be like secretly insane, or maybe it's just terrible. Like I really need to play with it more to have a better idea. But yeah, I do like the combo kill. I think it's like pretty compact, and you have tons of flexibility, like I said, with the style of deck to adjust things. Like if these are good, you can play these instead of the card draw effects, or like Shieldred can basically just be anything, right? Like that's not a key piece of the strategy. It's just like a random good card. So yeah, there's a lot of room to tweak and tune things. But that's where I'll leave the video for you today. If you got any suggestions for this deck, I'd definitely be glad to hear them. I mean, the other awkward thing is that there's no Pioneer really coming up at the moment, right? So the PT coming up is Pioneer, but I'm not playing in that. And then from there we have the Modern RC coming up, which I would be playing in, and the RCQ season coming up is Standard. So whether I'll ever get a chance to play this deck, we will have to see when that happens. But that's all for today. This has been Li-Fi TCG with Pioneer Scapeshift. Signing out.